We have 3 more speakers today. We're going to hear from 2 more faculty projects, and we're also going to hear from a student project. So thank you. I'm going to just go ahead and welcome Professor Sally Levine up to the lectern here to talk about a really interesting architecture model project. Sally, thank you for coming here today.
Let's see.
Down arrow on that keyboard.
Oh, there it is. A little history. There used to be a School of Architecture here. My understanding is that it was phased out in the 1970s. When I started teaching here, I heard all kinds of juicy stories about this scandal or that scandal.
Let's get into that.
We'll take that offline. I'm sure it had to do with money because that's how everything is. About 10 years later, as I understand it, the university started what they called the pre-architecture second major. So that is what is offered here. It is, I hope, an opportunity for students to either explore something different that they're just interested in, or if they think they're interested in architecture, then I always tell them that at the end of the semester, I hope they liked me, but if they didn't like architecture, I saved them a lot of time and energy applying to graduate school and deciding then that they didn't like architecture. But fortunately, that doesn't happen too much. So there are 3 studios that are offered: Arts 302, Arts 303, and Arts 304. Arts 303 is in the fall, 304 is every spring, and am I doing this right? 302 is in the fall, 303 is in the spring, 304 is every other spring, so this year is one of those years. So in the they're all sort of introductory because that's about as far as we get. I start, these are conceptual models. In these models, the students are to make 12 1 by 1 by 1 cubes and cut 12 3-inch rods, paint the rods white, make the model. This model is an example of one that is done by hand. I do this intentionally because I want them to really appreciate the laser cutter. I don't want them to take it for granted. So these are some pictures from this year when I put this together before. I have a bunch more models I could have included, but anyway, so we were at the laser cutter, and we also then went up to the shop, and they could use saws to actually very nicely cut off those 3-inch rods. And then this model is 9 rods, 9 cubes, and 9 1-inch squares in a 9-square grid, exploring solids, voids, implied voids, things like that. So that is our annual fall project. I started teaching computer programs, mostly graphic and design and art programs, back in the 90s, and I kept thinking students would always, in 3 years, they would know all these programs. And this fall, for the first time, when I asked how many people knew, now I'm blanking. What is the software? No. To use a laser cutter. CorelDRAW. The other one.
CorelDRAW?
Well, CorelDRAW, but there's another one too. Illustrator. I don't know why I blanked. Anyway, this was the first time when I said how many students know how to use these programs that every hand went up. My studio is small. It maxes out at 8. It's limited by the number of drawing boards, and we have 7 students. And so it is well over 20 years for students to have gotten as far as I thought they were going to be by the turn of the millennium. So that's what we do in the fall. In the spring, we analyze some buildings, and I have them do facade models. These are low relief models, so it's not the full depth, but to get the idea of shade and shadow and texture. And, having some depth is quite different than having it flatly drawn. So this is one. Imagine what this would have been like to have cut out all of those little windows. So the students get very excited about these. And one student decided to do an etching of his facade. This is a church in Iceland. So they're pretty experimental, and I sort of say do this however you want to do it. We try to provide as many of the materials as possible for them. A couple of my students have worked with 3D modeling. It used to be really expensive. I don't know if the price has gone down or not. But some students have done that on their own. And before I show this last one, I just wanted to say, because you mentioned that everybody thinks that engineers are the ones that are using ThinkBox, and I have many students. They come from all over all of the departments, but my biggest source is from civil engineering, and I have been an advisor to senior projects many times, and one in civil engineering. And one of my students one time, because of her experience with me, built a model of the project that she and her team were doing. And I was told by the department chair that it was the first time anybody had brought a model to the civil engineering final project review. So maybe it's not the engineers, yay, for the rest of us. So then we do some experimental explorations about interpreting space. This is, again, a low relief of a painting, and how might you think about which planes move up and down. This is a high relief model, also of a painting that begins to explore how the shapes and forms can be used to create solids and voids and spaces like that. And then 1 year, because this syllabus changes the most, we did the Art Studios building is in what used to be a restaurant, for people who remember that far back. And so we redesigned the entry and the seating area for a restaurant of their choice to whatever kind of food they wanted to offer. And they also did the signage. So we came back to ThinkBox, and this was for an Asian restaurant. Student came up with the name. This was the Happy Lentil, in case you can't read it, but pretty intricate, and that was vegetarian. And finally, this is a burger place. The student's last name was Vanderberg, hence Berg, for his signage. So we've really been excited. I've been excited to be able to add one visit every semester to ThinkBox, just to make sure that the students know that it's here, begin to understand and appreciate the opportunities that they have. And we'll see what happens next. So, thank you.
We have quickly time for one or two questions. Does anybody have anything they wanted to ask Sally?
Yes.
What was the material for the high relief models? Was that chipboard?
Yes. That was all chipboard.
That's handy. And then, so they'll draw out in, thanks. They'll draw out in Illustrator or Corel Draw all the things, print them, and then there's still assembly and gluing
Right.
together?
Right. Although, particularly for the high relief, sometimes they have to know in advance that they need some vertical pieces. So it's still assembly, but it's a little more complex in thinking about how they're going to raise up the pieces that they want to have. Whereas the low relief, it's typically just a layer on top of another layer.
And they're studying an existing painting?
Yes. Yeah, and a painting of their choice, and students always make things more difficult than I would ever give them as an assignment. So it's amazing to me.
That's the overconfidence bias. We all have it.
I guess so. So, thank
Well,
you.
thank you, Sally, for joining us. Appreciate your time. Rachel, do you want to join us? This is a really different and very interesting project. I'm going to just let Rachel take it away from here.
Sure. Well, I'm not going to lie, it's hard to be last up here on the group of faculty presenters with some very intelligent people. My background, I'm Rachel Summer. I'm the Director of Operations and Partnerships at the Swetland Center for Environmental Health, which a lot of people don't know even exists at our university, but we are just across the street in what was formerly the Bioenterprise building. If you notice, they just started taking the letters off the building there. And I'll talk more about where we're going to be soon in the next couple of years. But my background is in social work and community engaged practice, community organizing. I don't have a background in engineering. I don't know anything about technology or all these really important things that you guys do here, but I do understand the social aspect of things. My husband likes to joke that I have a master's degree in feelings, and I am in the part-time MBA program now, so I can kind of being able to bridge these worlds. But I wanted to just talk a little bit about our center, what we do, and then how we are collaborating. So this is a picture from an activity we did at Riddall Farm, which is in the Kinsman neighborhood of Cleveland. And it kind of exemplifies our mission. Really, we're trying to study the complex interplay between the environmental drivers of population health outcomes, and we are really looking at community-engaged approaches to doing that, and how we can address structural racism and how that creates and sustains environmental health inequities, and translating those in ways that create solutions that are usable by the community and will address population health equity. So, we are constantly trying to innovate in our research and evolve. And on the screen, I have some examples of our work. We're really solutions-oriented. Community engaged are the two primary focuses of our research. We look at food systems and health equity as one area of research, and dissemination and implementation science. So one example is the menu of actions, which was a culmination of findings that we put together from doing a series of systems dynamic modeling workshops and learning about issues related to we wanted to illuminate the injustices of the food system and provide guidance for addressing these dynamics. And Produce Path is a little bit different. It's a dissemination science product that we created that uses technology to address nutritious food access from the view of both farmers markets and families with children, which is a population that is at high risk for food insecurity. So I'm going to share a little bit more about these two focus areas of research. So generally, when we approach problems in our center, research questions we develop are based on problems and finding the solutions. So in this example, we were looking at the issue of SNAP benefits and benefits for people who are on SNAP. If you're not familiar with SNAP, it's the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. People may refer to it as food stamps. And there's a specific benefit called Produce Perks that allows people to double their money at farmers markets using this benefit, and at some grocery stores locally and nationally. And just many people were not aware of it, although they were very excited to know that they could use it. Just we found from our research that people were not using it because they weren't aware. So using technology to address that, we developed this Produce Path is like the larger app, and within there is the FM Engage app, which is the user-facing side. So we looked at testing a pilot of this app using a human-centered approach. So the picture we have here is this example of, like, if you've ever used a bad app, somebody designs it and then it's like the user experience is quite different, like this path the person's going on, completely cutting off the design. So we wanted to make sure that we spent time piloting with real users of SNAP and farmers markets. So the farmers market's able to put in information on the back end, and on the front end, the user is able to see things like, are they open today? Because sometimes farmers markets close randomly and you're not aware. Or what are they selling? Is this in season? Who will be there? What benefits can I use? And they're actually in the middle of piloting this more fully in Cleveland and in Franklin County right now. So that's one example of the dissemination science piece of what we do. But getting more into our community engaged practice and our collaborations with ThinkBox and other institutions on campus, we have a really dedicated commitment to using a racial equity lens in our research, but we realized that we needed to spend more time operationalizing what that looked like. So in 2021, we went through somewhat of a strategic planning process around our community engagement and racial equity practices, because our intention really is to place community power and ownership at the forefront of our research. So this really means that we have to be transparent about our process, our progress, and our opportunities for growth, how we can work together with other individuals, organizations, and institutions towards a mutual goal of systems transformation. And that's, I think some of the work we're trying to collaborate with ThinkBox and others on, and then holding ourselves accountable through continuous learning and self-assessment in making changes. So out of that process, one of the priorities that evolved was a need to elevate support for our Black, Brown, and Indigenous community research partners so that we can build and sustain trusting research partnerships that would result in community-driven solutions to advance environmental health equity. So many of you know that we are at an institution with a lot of power. Even the land that we sit on and the ways that that land was procured has a very deep history and a deep trauma that exists and persists in the community, sometimes whether we like it or not. And we're trying to do what we can to undo and rebuild those relationships so that we can work together. But that can only happen when we leverage the power that we have. And I think what we have here in ThinkBox is an excellent example. We have this amazing resource. It's, like was said earlier, a private institution availing itself to the community to use. And when we do our work with community partners, a lot of times they don't know about these resources, and it's not anyone's fault, but access has to go beyond just the presence of a building or presence of a program. And I'm not speaking directly at ThinkBox, but sometimes we just don't always know how to share this with the community. So we're trying to be very intentional in our approach. And sometimes that goes well and sometimes that doesn't go well. So like as an example, we have a community fellowship, Food Systems Change Fellowship for people who want to innovate change around food systems in their neighborhoods in Greater Cleveland. And we invited them to our campus as part of their 6-month fellowship. Thank you for the warning. So that they can experience these resources available to them. So everybody who became a fellow received a community card. If you're not familiar with that, it is a sort of like a membership cards of sorts that the university offers that avails certain resources, discounts to certain places, and access to things like, ThinkBox is already available to the community, but things like our athletic fields or the KSL library. And then we schedule tours both here and at KSL library because, again, you can say this is available to you, but until somebody goes and they know, like, okay, how do I even get in here? Like here, you have to go to the security desk right on the floor. And it can be very intimidating. I mean, if I'm intimidated coming up here in front of all of you and I've worked here for 6 years, just think how a community member feels. And that's really what I see my job as, being the bridge and the link between community and institutions. And so I try to put myself in the mind of a community member, or, you know, through the conversations I have with them, and think about like what would be a barrier. The barriers aren't always physical. Barriers are emotional, historical. So I think being there with them and arranging relationships ahead of time and talking about the needs, like it was great to hear from everyone at our partner sites, KSL and here, like, hey, what is it that you guys are working on? Like, what is the project, so we can, you know, tailor this presentation to your group and show them some of the tools that might be useful for them. Like, many people we work with are brilliant, amazing minds in our community doing wonderful things. And they say to us all the time, like, we're doing all this good work and you get all the money. We don't get that. Why? Why are we not given the opportunity and chance? And so that's what I'm trying to do. And so whether somebody's like, we know somebody who started a restaurant or somebody who has a coffee shop, and it's like, hey, did you know you can like print signage up here for your business, or like those kinds of things, like that makes the difference. And so that's one example of what we're trying to do. And even after those tours, like we had, you know, a conversation about an experience at the library, and something that was said to one of the community members didn't sit with them the right way. And I knew the intention was not malice, but that's the way they interpret it. And we've had this great back and forth with those partners to say, like, how can we improve this next time so that everybody feels welcome here? Also, at the culmination of our fellowship, we had a pitch competition, and you know, we're using the business model canvas as a lens for our fellows to think about how they innovate for food systems change. And so they prepared a pitch, and we had support from ThinkBox, both in sponsoring that competition as well as giving feedback on their pitches throughout their practice times, which was really greatly helpful. And I know it's almost time for me to wrap up, so I'll keep going. So those are just some of the ways, you know, that we've, you know, been partnering with ThinkBox and others to support our community members and improve access. And in the next 5 years, we're going to be moving to Midtown, so we won't be as easily accessible to ThinkBox, but we're going to be at this innovation center in Midtown, where we're going to have partners like Jumpstart and ECDI and others to help spur those ideas and bring community closer to the institutions, and evolving in that way. So I imagine we'll still be working together and looking for new opportunities. So thank you. And
I think we have time for one question. Does anybody, let's get the microphone out so we can, it helps because it's being recorded and then I'll hear what you said.
So exciting to learn. Have you ever worked or collaborated with UH? And it seems like a lot of your work focuses on food access. And I know that we have a Food for Life initiative, which is really about making sure people who need access to healthy food can even be prescribed it. And that might align well with what you're doing. And there's also a diabetes center that we are just opening, I think, in Midtown. And those people there might be good cohesiveness with your mission.
yeah, we've definitely had some collaborations with UH in the past, but like I think like kind of like CASE, it's like so big that, right, you might be working with one group but not be aware of another group. So right now, through the Clinical and Translational Science Collaborative, we have some partnerships going on. And previously, when Sarah O'Keefe worked at UH, I worked with her. Now she's Director of Sustainability for City of Cleveland. But definitely always looking to continue opportunities to develop research or address problems in our community. So happy to connect. Yeah.
If there's another question, I'm going to ask if we can save it until just after, because I want to make sure that we give Max time to share his project. Thank you, Rachel. Thanks, John. So we also have two really fantastic student startups that are scheduled for today. We have one about 3D printed instruments, but the student who was going to present had a health situation and wasn't able to join. But they make these really wonderful 3D printed violins, violas. I think they're moving towards cellos pretty soon. I can't answer why this person is playing the violin in a cello position, but I'm sure there's a very good explanation. So if we can just find his contact info at the end, we could all learn that together. I've heard these. They actually sound quite good. I thought, plastic wouldn't vibrate and produce the right kind of harmonic resonances, but it sounds surprisingly good. So we'll ask him about that when we can. Hopefully he feels better soon. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to invite Max to come on up here and tell us about Cleaner. I'm really excited about this, and I'm glad folks are here to hear this one. Please join me in welcoming Max to the stage. Start you off there.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm Max. I just graduated from Case in 2022, and in 2021, myself, Chip Miller, and David Dillman, who are currently on co-op working for Cleaner, started working against microplastics. So weirdly enough, your clothes are the largest source of microplastics out in the environment, which takes a little bit to actually understand what's going on. But actually, if you think about doing your laundry, every time you pull the dryer lint filter out, that's all microplastic. And it takes a little bit to think about, but it's polyester, polyamide, acrylic, all going out into our waterways pretty much every day. So finally, people have caught on. You're actually eating 5 grams of microplastics every week, which is like slowly eating a credit card, and no one really realizes it. The health impacts of actually eating those are still unknown, but I haven't really met anybody that would say they want plastic inside of their body. And they're all pretty bad. I mean, they're associated with and linked to different types of cancers and malignancies, and the research just keeps coming. So finally, legislation is caught up, and in France, they have some legislation that requires you to have a microplastic filter by 2025. There's also legislation that's being talked about in California, Oregon, Illinois, and New Jersey, all about implementing microplastic filters on washing machines. So we've developed and actually just launched our microplastic filter at the IFA. It's a big trade show in Berlin. So we actually won a couple of Best of IFA awards for our technology and what we developed, which was all here at the ThinkBox. And yeah, we're up on the 7th floor. So it's been a really exciting time. Let me go. So we actually have an external filter and an internal filter. So there's a few different approaches as to how you can actually fit a microplastic filter around a washing machine. We started with actually wanting to only do the internal filters, but washing machine manufacturers can't really change the insides of their washing machines that quickly. So it's easier to make a subsystem that basically sits on top of the washing machine. But our long-term vision is to have one inside because it's a big unit. Not everybody has that amount of space in their laundry room, but it lets us get units out in the field to actually test and learn from and iterate. So our unit is going to be available in 2024. It removes 90% of microplastics emitted from your washing machine. And yeah, I mean, our innovations here, it's really all about creating a vortex to suspend microplastics rather than having them push directly up against the mesh. It's a little bit funny, but cotton towels are like the most clogging thing that you can find. So if you wash cotton towels using other types of filters, it clogs immediately. I've had the pleasure of flooding my own house with cotton towels with some of our earlier prototypes. But yeah, I mean, basically we started and we just 3D printed on the 3rd floor until we came up with something that finally worked. So our solution's actually inspired by how fish filter. So fish use what's called vortexes in between their gills. That's how they're able to swim without actually clogging their type of mesh. So we used a similar concept. They don't really have a spiral, they have bones. But they also have muscles, and their muscles help them move the particles. We can't make muscles. So we have this spiral, which basically makes a continuous vortex all the way down the spiral and pushes all the microplastics into one location. And then we actually have some like CFDs that actually show what's going on, but that's really like the magic behind our solution. Rather than clogging immediately with dead end and crossflow filtration, we're able to suspend the particles and push them all into one location. So as a consumer, all you have to do is remove this canister, and there's a pod inside that's biodegradable, and you can recycle it if you want, or you can throw it away. And yeah, it's 30 seconds a week to remove 90% of microplastics from your washing machine. So that's quick, but that's sort of what we've been doing up on the 7th floor, and it's really exciting and couldn't have been done without the ThinkBox.
I'm sure we have time for a question or two. If you want to get the microphone out. Does anyone have a question for Max? I see one over here.
Oh.
Yeah, it helps because then the folks listening later can hear the questions.
So you described in the dryer that we would see microplastics.
Mhm.
Obviously, this gets before the dryer. And then I don't know what my question is. You get some of it out then, and then more happens later.
No, so this is actually for the washing machine.
Right, I know, so it's before the dryer.
Yeah, so the weird part about the washing machine is like the drain just goes right into the wall, so you don't even really think about the fact that there's a drain there. But all of that water is full of microplastics, so it goes out, and it does go to the wastewater treatment plants, but they just settle it out into what's called sludge, and then they just put it back on farmers' fields, so it's never actually removed, and it really needs to get removed at the source to be effective.
And then when the person cleans this canister out, then where's that?
That goes, so yeah, there's a few different phases of what you want to do. The first phase is it has to get out of our water. So right now it's in your tap water, it's in your food, and that's because there's no way to actually concentrate and keep these microplastics in one spot. So the first phase is let's get it into managed waste systems. The second phase is how do we actually start to reuse the fibers for something that's meaningful? And it's not going to be like it's not going to be fully circular at the start, but at least you can use it for insulation or for building materials or for whatever. And then the third phase is how do we actually upcycle the fibers into something that's meaningful that makes it fully circular, but you have to start with getting them out of our bodies.
You described that perfectly. Phase one, get it out of the water. Okay. Thanks.
No problem.
Do we have one more question? We have two more. I think we have time.
I guess my general question is, you just mentioned that you launched. What's next for you guys?
Yeah, so I would say it was more of an announcement than a launch. So now it's time to actually launch.
Great answer. We had a question from Allison over here.
Is your consumers, are we your target audience, since you said it's kind of slow for washing machine companies to adopt new technology?
Our target is actually with the washing machine manufacturers. So we're currently talking with most of them about how to implement different pilot programs, testing programs, but they're all working to meet the legislation and figure out what their right strategy and approach is. And I think they all know that they need to test in the market first before they make the investment to change the internals of their washing machines. So I think we offer a low investment way for washing machine manufacturers to quickly test.
So we wouldn't buy this?
Yeah, our plan's to be more B2B, yeah.
Well, thank you, Max. And
Thank you. Yep.
So you can see why we're so excited about the innovation that's happening on campus here with our students and staff and faculty. And for our speakers, I just wanted to give an additional thank you. We have some gift bags. I wonder if Professor McGuffin-Colley would be so kind as to sort of Vanna White those over to our illustrative speakers. But please join me in giving them all a hearty round of applause. Thanks for joining, everybody, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day and the rest of Case Western Reserve University's Innovation Week.